Me and my twin like the same girl, and we both got her. I grew up as a twin, which meant I never had anything that was only mine. Faces, birthdays, stories, everything was shared. I told myself I was fine with that. I didn't realize how much it mattered until we met her. She entered our lives naturally, like someone who had always been there. Same friend group, same places, same timing. I noticed her first, or at least I thought I did. The way she listened, the way she leaned in when I spoke, the way she remembered things I never repeated. I convinced myself it was real, that it was different with me. What I didn't notice at first were the patterns, the pauses in her replies, the way she sometimes used phrases I'd only heard my brother say, the nights she was busy but never unreachable. I ignored it because the alternative felt worse than being wrong. Then I saw the signs everywhere. Familiar gestures, familiar stories told back to me with tiny details changed. It felt like looking at my own life through a cracked mirror. Everything was almost right, but never fully mine. I never asked my brother. He never asked me. We both stayed quiet, pretending silence could protect us. Somewhere deep down, I think we both knew the truth and were afraid to say it out loud. The realization hit when I understood she hadn't chosen between us. She had simply taken both, not out of confusion, not by mistake, but because she could. Everything I felt, he felt too. Every moment I thought was special had been duplicated, replayed, shared without my knowledge. The bond I believed was private had been split cleanly down the middle. And the worst part wasn't that we both had her, it was that she had planned it that way. And standing there, knowing what was coming next, I realized the real question wasn't who she would choose. It was which twin would be left with nothing when she finally decided to stop sharing. I stopped pretending once I knew. There was a strange calm that followed the realization, like the quiet after something breaks beyond repair. The anger came later. First came clarity. Every memory rearranged itself into a pattern that finally made sense. The overlapping timelines, the repeated phrases, the way she never mixed us up, not even once. That was the detail that confirmed it. If it had been an accident, there would have been confusion. If it had been carelessness, there would have been mistakes. But she never slipped. She had managed two versions of the same relationship with precision. I began watching instead of wondering. I paid attention to what she gave me and what she withheld. The affection was calibrated, not emotional. The reassurance arrived right before doubt could turn into confrontation. The distance appeared only when I was getting too close. Every interaction felt measured, like she was maintaining equilibrium rather than connection. I realized then that she wasn't attached to either of us as individuals. What she was attached to was symmetry, two people who looked the same, two emotional sources, two validations running in parallel. She didn't need to choose because choice would collapse the structure she had built. As long as we existed separately and silently, she got everything without consequence. And my brother and I made it easy for her. We had been trained our entire lives to coexist without conflict, to share without asking, to assume the other would adapt. That habit, drilled into us since childhood, became the foundation she stood on. She relied on our silence the way gravity relies on mass. It wasn't accidental, it was familiar. The hardest realization wasn't about her at all, it was about us. I saw how deeply our bond had been shaped by avoidance. We loved each other, but we had never learned how to compete honestly. We never learned how to say, "This is mine," without guilt. So when something finally mattered enough to divide us, we froze. She exploited that freeze. The nights grew heavier, not because of jealousy, but because of erosion. Every time I thought about telling my brother, I imagined the look on his face if he already knew. I imagined the confirmation that neither of us had been chosen, that we were interchangeable in her eyes, that the thing we feared most growing up had followed us into adulthood. So I waited. She noticed the shift before I said anything. She always did. She started offering reassurance more often, but it felt thinner now, like a routine she had perfected and was running on muscle memory. She assumed I would behave the way I always had, quiet, accommodating, grateful for attention. She underestimated what happens when someone finally understands the game. I stopped reacting. I stopped chasing clarity. I stopped trying to be distinct. Instead, I became observant, detached. I mirrored her calm back at her, and that was when she grew uneasy. People like her thrived on imbalance. When everything stayed level, she didn't know where to apply pressure. She began tightening her control, subtly at first. Small reminders of exclusivity, timed affection, emotional callbacks designed to anchor me. But the illusion was gone. I could see the mechanisms behind the gestures. Once you see the wiring, the magic dies. What finally ended it wasn't confrontation. It wasn't a dramatic reveal. It was exposure. I told my brother everything, not with anger, not with accusation, just the facts laid out cleanly, stripped of emotion, dates, behaviors, patterns, the same ones I knew he had noticed too. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look relieved. He looked tired. That was when I understood how long he had been carrying the same weight. There was no argument between us, no competition, no demand for proof. The truth landed where it had already been waiting. We compared timelines, not to accuse each other, but to confirm what she had done. The overlap was exact, the planning meticulous, the deception deliberate. And suddenly, the rivalry we had feared dissolved into something else entirely. Solidarity. She lost control the moment we spoke to each other, not because we confronted her, but because we removed the separation she depended on. Her power existed only in our silence. Once that ended, so did her leverage. We didn't announce anything. We didn't warn her. We simply stepped back in unison. She noticed immediately. The messages came more frequently, then more erratic. The balance she maintained began to tilt. She tried to pull us closer, not realizing the structure had already collapsed. She didn't understand that we weren't angry. We were done. There is a specific kind of panic that appears when someone realizes they are no longer being managed, when their strategies stop working, when the people they believed were predictable suddenly aren't. She tried to choose then. That was the most revealing part. Not because she finally picked one of us, but because she tried to frame it as a decision she had always planned to make. As if the choice itself would erase the manipulation that came before it. As if offering exclusivity at the end could retroactively make everything ethical. It couldn't. By the time she reached out, there was nothing left to salvage. Trust doesn't break loudly. It thins out quietly until there's nothing to stand on. And she had spent too long dividing it evenly between two people to notice it disappearing altogether. We didn't accept her explanation, not because it was cruel, but because it was insufficient. No apology fixes intentional duplication, no justification erases premeditation, and no choice matters once the motive behind it is exposed. Walking away wasn't dramatic, it was clean. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. There was no relief at first, just space. Empty space where something intense had been. But over time, that space became clarity instead of loss. My relationship with my brother changed in ways I didn't anticipate. For the first time, we spoke honestly about what it meant to share a life. Not just childhood toys or family expectations, but emotional territory. We acknowledged the resentment we had buried, the comparisons we pretended didn't matter, the competition we were taught to ignore instead of resolve. Losing her forced us to confront something far older than her presence, and in doing so, we reclaimed something we had never fully owned ourselves. She didn't ruin us. She revealed the cracks that were already there. But instead of letting them widen, we filled them with truth, with communication, with boundaries we had never been encouraged to build. The irony is that she never truly had either of us. She had access, she had attention, she had control for a while. But connection requires consent, and we never consented to being duplicated. In the end, she was the one left alone. Not because we coordinated revenge or sought justice, but because her entire structure depended on secrecy. Once exposed, there was nothing underneath it, no foundation, no loyalty, no one to choose her back. As for us, we didn't lose a girl. We lost an illusion. And for the first time in our lives, what remained wasn't shared by force. It was shared by choice.